guys, welcome back to the podcast. I'm your host, Nick Daniels, as always. And finally, Nicola's back joining us today.
Hi, everybody.
She's back in her house in Cape Town, which is great to hear. And today we have another guest on the show. But before we do that, before I introduce him, I just want to say to you guys, if you found this content helpful or valuable to you, please make sure to like, subscribe, give us, maybe even a comment. It really helps with the channel. So our guest today started his career in finance and Forex trading before he got more interested in the tech and entrepreneurial side of things. So he decided to join a startup company called SovTech, which he would design and build web and mobile apps for businesses. This is where he specialized in product and user experience design and grew a passion for designing engaging digital solutions. After growing SovTech to 100 people, Andrew felt like he had reached the ceiling. So he moved over to Positive Thinking Company, where he did much of the same, but at a much, much larger scale. They have built billion-dollar valuation digital banks and applications that compete with the likes of Netflix in the Middle East. And he now finds himself as the vice president of sales and ensures the solutions they are designing are adding value to their clients and their users. So Andrew, welcome to the pod. It's great to have you on.
Yeah, it's good to be here, Nick. It's been also awesome to, watch your podcast grow as well. So it's for me just to be on here. It's awesome. So thanks for having us.
Absolutely. So today's topic, it's not on the screen for the viewers, but it's actually, there's an app for that. So we're diving into everything in the app space. And I'm super excited about this because one day, would like to develop one myself, maybe me and Nicola together, which would be awesome. So let's start right from the beginning. Most people know what an app is. It's something that you would have on your phone. You can even have a PC app, for example, use Facebook, use Instagram, use WhatsApp. Those are all different apps. But Andrew, how do you actually develop the idea or the app concept?
It's a good question because, we have, in my experience, we've had many people come to us with all different range of ideas. Right. And that's really, at SovTech and now Positive Thinking Company, we get so many people that say, I have an idea. This is what I want to build, etc. And although the idea might be fantastic, it's really once you delve into that application, into that business itself, you start to learn a lot more about, is it actually going to work really? So when you develop an idea, I think the most important thing is to actually take the app completely out of the picture. Just get rid of it and think of the business first. So a lot of people, they want the app to be the business, but what they forget is that most good applications have a business behind it already. Okay. So they actually forget that they want the app to be the business, and that is where they often fail. So what is the business, behind the application, and can that business function without the application? That's often the place that I like to start, so taking that idea, looking at the business itself, taking a step back, how is it going to function? Is there a market for it? Taking a look at the user base. Is there a user base? Are they going to pay for it or the service? Maybe not the application itself. Are they going to pay for the service? How much are they willing to pay for the service? And how often do they need that service? So when you look at it like that, you can kind of take the technology out of the picture. And then once you believe that the business can actually function outside of the technology, bring the technology in to help scale the business itself. So using technology as more as an enabler rather than the actual business itself, So there are different cases, like, for example, Shazam, the application, where you can open your phone and it'll tell you what song is playing. That app is unique because it is the business, right? But Grab, Uber, there's a whole other logistics business behind that, and technology is just enabling that business to be better and at the touch of someone's fingertips. Just really looking at the business first. That's always the place to start, and also a lot of the apps we use, we think from a consumer perspective, but there's tons of different applications out there. You could have an app for your CRM that you use at your company. You could have a pizza delivery application that's more for the consumer side. could have B2C, B2B. There's many different types. So really, like, what is the fundamental business behind it, and what is the purpose of that? And that for me is really the starting point before you start to look at the technology that you're going to use.
Yeah. Nicola, your thoughts on, I mean, you've obviously worked with people who have, I guess, developed apps, or companies that, trying to make apps.
Yeah, I really like what Andrew's saying. It's like business first, idea, app second, because I think it's almost, I wouldn't say it's impossible, like Shazam is possible, but an app is an interface between you and your customer or your user. And the one thing that concerns me about apps is there's just so many. And eventually it's almost like every business develops an app.
Yeah.
And eventually I look at my own phone and it's like, what do I delete? And why did I download that? And now I've got an email attached to it and I can't get rid of it, or I try and get out of it.
Yeah. And why did I even get it in the beginning?
Yeah. Why did I? So, I mean, my question is, what makes a good app? And granted, the business, I think, is essential. I think that's a very important point. But why? Why would I want this?
So the reality is exactly what you said, right? So we probably use 5 to 10 apps max. But in the App Store today, in the Google Play Store, there's 2.5 million apps. Well, I think it even could be 3.5 million apps.
Crazy.
And in the Apple Store, there's just over 2 million. So how can there be so many when really only about 1.5% to 2% of applications actually survive? So the data says that, once you download your app and you launch your app, within a day, you will lose 70% of your users. Okay. Wow. So you will lose 70% of your users, and over the next 60 days, you'll lose 90% of your users. So the ability from a mobile application standpoint, the ability to actually keep your users, not only acquire them, that's a whole nother story. To keep your users is very, very, very difficult. And that's why there's so few apps that we actually use today. And so what makes a good application, and it's okay, so there's so many different factors that go into that. But, why do you use those 10 applications? Maybe you use WhatsApp, you use your banking application, you probably have Spotify and a few other things that you feel that you need. And the experience is good enough for you to keep coming back. And they probably have some form of way to keep you coming back. Okay, so sometimes it's a service. I need to get from point A to B, so I use Uber. I need to communicate, so I use WhatsApp. These are essential services. But there's other applications that are not maybe core essential services. Maybe you use Strava. That's more of like something for your enjoyment, But the way that some of these applications are working is, how do they keep you coming back? And it's a couple different factors. Like, what are you getting from that service, from that application, is obviously the most important, and who else is involved. The greatest way or most of the successful applications have some form of network. So it's not just you on your own in this space. But just to tap into your question, I think that the experience of the application is very, very important in terms of how you navigate through, how you find what you need in the easiest possible way, so that you're not looking for something too hard. Everything should be there exactly when you need it. And also, just making sure that you can get your service as fast as possible. That's the most important thing. Okay.
So just out of curiosity, so you lose 90% of your, customers in 1 week. Have you heard of any unicorn apps that just took off from the get-go? Ones that you can look at the model.
I think that when you do your business model for a new idea, right? So say you could be a business or you could be an individual. One of the issues is that people don't take into consideration in their modeling the fact that you're going to lose 70% in the first day and 90% over the first 2 months. And they also don't consider that your budget, typically if it's a consumer application, needs to be about 70% of your budget needs to go towards marketing. Okay, so a lot of these unicorn applications they're primarily based on a service, unless they're a social network. Like you, for example, look at Grab, they're offering something there, right? Yeah. So over time, they build their customer base. So I can't say that you see them like take off because they grow very gradually, but the top 10 applications, the top 10 applications will lose, I think it's only 70% after the first 3 months of launching.
Wow.
It's so difficult.
Yeah.
And that's besides the fact that you actually have to get people to download it first.
Yeah.
Okay. So when you do see these successful apps, you just see what they've had to go through to actually be so successful. It's astonishing.
Yeah. So like WhatsApp, for example, I deleted social media just for the time being, but WhatsApp, for example, there's no like advertisements or anything that keeps me going back to it. The only thing would be my little notification that comes on in the top left-hand corner. But I keep going back. And my network, yeah, of course. And that's why I keep going back, because it's a service, right? And I wouldn't be able to communicate with anyone without it.
Yeah.
Cool. So next question for you, Jules, is how do you even go about building an app?
So this was today's my passion, I would say. It's a very, very complex process. Okay, but let's maybe use an example just to give the audience something to relate to. But let's say we're talking about a pizza delivery application, and there's two scenarios. Either you already have a pizza business and you now want to reach more customers, or you feel that you love pizza and you really want to get this out there. You want to start this application, and you're going to make pizzas, and everyone's going to download your application, and off you go. So first step for me is the ideation phase, where you spend time with your business partners, depending on who those is. So there's another discussion around what team you're going to build behind this. But the ideation phase is key in terms of, number one, setting out a business plan or a business model. It doesn't have to be too heavy, because people often spend too much time developing this crazy business plan, and then they never actually get to do anything because they coax themselves out of it. But develop a plan where you feel like there's enough market people will actually purchase your service. And once you have that, start building something as small as possible. Okay, so just get into it. Okay, so what they call that in the market or in the industry is a minimum viable product. So MVP, and this word has been absolutely bastardized, over time. but really, what an MVP is, it's the minimum set of features that you need to test the concept and validate the concept. And that in the pizza delivery application, you might have a login and registration. You might have one or two pizzas that you can select from, and there's someone sitting there. They make the pizza, and they contact you on WhatsApp, and they say, "Hey, I'm going to deliver it to you." So that in that process, you can see that someone downloaded your application, they came in, they ordered a pizza, you delivered the pizza, and maybe on WhatsApp you asked them, how was it? How was your experience?
Review, yeah.
And so that's really that could be your minimum viable product. And inside that first version, it's really important to build your analytics tracking. So of the people that log in, how many people order a pizza? How many of the people that ordered a pizza, how many got it delivered? Or that critical path, what they call the critical path. And you can track basically through each of the different steps. What is the engagement? Where's the drop off? How's it going? Is this successful? No, actually, they just really didn't like any of the flavors, or email didn't actually come through, or they didn't give us feedback afterwards. And you're really testing each different stage. And once you realize, okay, we actually want to offer pizzas where people can create their own type of pizza. Okay, so that's what we felt from what we heard from the feedback. We felt like people wanted to build their own pizzas rather than ordering from a fixed menu, for argument's sake. So then you build a small feature that allows you to add toppings, or to add something, or to have a base, and you can add certain things, and you put your analytics in and you test that. Okay. And once you've collected that information, so it follows the build, measure, learn philosophy. So you can see this in the Lean Startup. It's an entry-level startup book that I think everyone who's interested in entrepreneurship should really, really read. And it's about building something, measuring what happened, and from that, you adapt your application or your strategy based on what your customers are saying. Okay, that's the methodology behind that. And that can really move as fast as you want. So in my earlier career, we were building a lot of MVPs for clients, and that was the main business really. And in my later part of my career now, we're building fully scalable products that are used by millions of people every day. And it's a whole different ballgame, really. So I think the concept of actually just getting started, building something, testing it, and adapting to your customer base is really important. And I'd also like to say that the team that you have with you is very important too. So you could be an engineer yourself. In that case, it's a lot easier because you have the skills to build this first thing. You could be sales, business, finance, and therefore you have this great concept and this great idea, but you don't know how to build it, and you absolutely don't know how to validate whether it's a good technical solution too. Or you could have someone who's fantastic on marketing, but has no expertise on the financial side or the tech side. So who is the team that you're going to take with you to execute on this vision and this plan? And what relevant skills do you have that you can contribute to making sure that this is a success? Sure. So yeah, get going as fast as you can and test, measure, learn, adapt.
Cool. Nicola, your thoughts?
I mean, it all sounds spot on to me. I mean, just this notion that you've got to get the right team together to build something. And I know the fundamentals of the lean startup concept and MVPs. Mm. You know, the other side of this is the investment required. Mm-hmm. So, and then what do you charge for an app? And is it something that's, you know, sometimes you get them and it's like, it's going to cost you, I don't know, 500 Rand in South Africa for a year, or it's a subscription monthly. So there's that sort of transition from the idea to the cost. Mm-hmm. And it requires a team to put an app together. And then when you put a statistic out saying you'll lose 70% of your users in a day,
on the first day,
you could see all these guys with their cash going, what? So where does the rubber hit the road financially?
It's a really good point. So in that ideation phase, and the phase that I went through with Zoot, for example, Nick, you know, you have to look at, so you got market, team, competition, and you're looking at, okay, so what next? You know, how is this application actually gonna make money so that it can fund the development, right? Because we can all argue, or we can all agree actually, the most important thing is users. You have to grow your user base, right? And in order to do like, and the purpose of that is because once you have loyal customers, then it makes it easier to generate revenue. You know, so many applications, successful and unsuccessful, you need to think of what your revenue stream is, and some have different approaches, right? So I'll come back to cost, but what is your approach? So some might say, let's just get all the users, and then once we have all the users, we'll find a revenue stream. You know, some go out the gates with a revenue stream. And there's many different models to this. You know, you could have a free application and offer certain gated features for different levels in the application, or different access to different services or functions that benefit the user. You could have subscription model. You could charge for the app up front and offer everything free within that. You could just have the actual service that you offer that you pay for, and so the application's free. So what is your strategy in terms of earning money? Because you're basically, you want to have a look at, how am I going to make money? And then what is my return on investment? How much am I willing to invest? Because coming back to cost now, let's take the pizza delivery application as an example again. So there is no way to really say how much that could cost, right? What you can say though is, the first version is, I need X amount of engineers, and this is where it's good to bring on a software development partner or build your own team internally, depending on how you want to go about that. But what is my revenue stream, and basically what is my return on investment that I can possibly earn, and what is my approach to that? And how do I work back from that to say, how much am I willing to invest? With the pizza delivery app itself, first version could be very cheap, but once you need to integrate, say you need, okay, so we need the consumer app, then we need a driver app in the future. Then we also need to make sure that there's an application at the stores. Then we need a management portal to manage the drivers and to manage the stores. and we need to keep developing the end user application. So to how it's impossible to price it, because people only think of the app that you're using at the front, but the amount of systems that go into making sure that that is a successful application. Even a simple thing is, with Google Maps, you pay per API call. So every time you call a driver, there's a cost to that. So there's a certain number of free.
Oh, wow.
But there's building the application, there's maintaining the application, there's the infrastructure to scale the systems there's all the different interfaces for management portals, reporting. And so the app you see, but the stuff behind it, that's the cost. That's the real, that's where the cost lies. And almost, for the man on the street that has an idea, they don't think about that. And for us, we build applications for businesses, right? And so they are also learning how much, you want reporting on how many drivers you have, how long does it take to make that delivery, and you need systems to do that. A lot, Nicola.
Yeah.
Depends what can you make? What is your revenue stream to support that cost?
Yeah. Just touching on that. So you were talking about different models there, like a subscription-based model, for example. In your experience, what model has been the most successful? Or is it relative?
So most of the apps that I've built there's a service behind it. So the technology is an enabler. You get things like Duolingo, which is very much gated features. If you want better services, Strava, if you want premium, that you got that subscription layer. So for me, you need to make sure that you can grow your user base as fast as possible, and make sure that the users are using the application so that you can measure if they're actually engaging in the right way and what to build next. So to have a cost, many applications in the past, specifically, that put a price to the app, you pay for the app's free. Now in-app purchases is really the main sort of revenue stream for applications. And that seems to be the most successful, because you get your users in, you can test how they're using it, you can offer sort of different gated features or levels for them to purchase. But as long as you're getting people in, at least on the base, then you can really adapt your application from there.
Okay, sure. Great insight, Andrew. So now say we have us three. I think Nick and Andrew Schurler have developed a pizza app, and it's absolutely booming in Taudi in Vietnam. But now Taudi in Vietnam is only a small little bubble, and things are starting to get a bit hectic, and we want to get bigger. So how do you scale our little pizza business for the listeners? How would you scale an app?
So in this case, it depends how you're distributing the food, right? Because again, going back to the business. So the reason I don't particularly think a pizza delivery app it's not a good idea.
Okay. Great example.
The reason I used it earlier is because in my past, we actually had a franchise that came to us and asked us to build this. And in the end, we advised them against it for a lot of the reasons that we're speaking about today. And so if you want to scale, let's take the scenario that maybe they have franchises all over the country. And so they're just testing this concept. They've built an application. They're testing it in a certain niche area. So it's about, how do you then deploy it to the different franchises around the country? And, does that franchise know how to conduct the delivery process? So for me, scaling the application is the easiest part, for sure. Because you're really just deploying that application, you're opening it up to different locations. So initially you would lock the location. So if someone is in Hanoi, for argument's sake, they can maybe go into the application, but they can't order anything because they're not within proximity. So then it's about opening up different locations. So when users are coming in, they can see, okay, there's a store close by. But in that scenario, it's definitely about scaling the business rather than scaling the application. In other scenarios where the technology is the business itself, you need to tie in a very robust marketing strategy together with your application expansion plan. So making sure that there is a customer base, there that is actually wants your users, and also be very careful as to whether they are going to use it in the same way as the current user base. So if people in Vietnam are loving this service, would they react the same in a different geography? And do you really understand the user base in that geography in terms of how they use digital experiences and applications? But the technology itself is actually quite easy to scale. That's the whole point of putting in the relevant architecture up front to make sure that you can actually scale the business. So if more users come in, is the infrastructure going to scale with the user base? Okay, so just to take a step back on that. So often when folks build an MVP, there's different approaches to it, right? So you can build something that you're going to throw away and rebuild once you've tested the concept. Or, and which I prefer, is to build a smaller infrastructure that can scale, with your user base, because then you don't have to throw away and start again. And then in the process, disrupt your customers that you worked so hard to acquire. So build almost like starting with a Ferrari engine, and then making sure that as you scale your business, you can really grow your customer base in line with the infrastructure that you set up initially. Okay. So yeah.
Cool. Nicola, you've obviously helped businesses scale. Have you ever worked with any, people like Andrew with scaling the app at the same time?
I haven't actually, but what I have seen is a lot of customers, clients, corporations will build apps for their employees. So if you take retail will have an app for, I don't know, an e-commerce site or something like that. But what you'll also find is they have a lot of apps for employee engagement. And they could be wellness programs. They could be actually managing the whole interface between employer and employee, leave application. And there's a lot of apps that are now interfaces between the big tech systems and then the user interface. So it's almost as if apps have become a way of getting people to engage with something else, or a way of acquiring customers. And to some extent, the app is the interface for the business. But Uber's a great example. The app is what we use to get to the service. So there must be a huge amount of development around enablement versus the commerciality of something, like you download a print driver app or something, or a scanner, and you get one scan, and then the next minute you've got to pay 50 Rand for the next one. That just irritates me.
Yeah.
It's like I've bought your printer, now I've got to pay for this.
Yeah.
So funnily enough, most of the applications we build are to empower employees. Only a small portion of them are consumer-facing applications. So a lot of businesses are building applications to streamline and make the service that they're offering for their customers who maybe don't have an interface more efficient, right? So a good example is exactly what you mentioned, just taking the retail one, where someone is in an electronics store and I want this phone, and the employee whips out their phone and they say, let me just order it for you right now. You click, you can even pay right then and there from that device. And someone from the back storage room brings it out, or it's delivered directly to your house, a few hours later. So those ones are a lot more exciting for me because they're actually solving proper problems. They're really making businesses more efficient. They're making the lives of people more efficient. That people are going to use it frequently, really, because they're employees, and it's making their lives more efficient too. And so the amount of data that you're tracking on engagement, and you can really improve your application at a much faster speed than trying to get end consumers to be loyal. It's really tough. First of all, download it, then remain loyal. So I know much of what we've spoken about today is about, consumer-facing applications, but there's a huge market for businesses to make their processes more efficient. Another example is like field mobility. It's a whole like vertical within the tech space, but it's if you're on site and you need to, report something or have a look at a specific data set, and that's really, really exciting place to play, because you know that you're going to get immediate usage and you're actually solving a real problem within the organization.
Okay.
Yeah.
So just touching on that retail example that you used, Nicola, and you'll remember this from when we were looking for your Garmin watch. We were going from store to store, and I can't pronounce the name the yellow shop in Vietnam, the Goi De Dong Dong, or whatever it's called. I don't know how to pronounce it in Vietnamese, but if you've been to Vietnam, you'll know exactly which store I'm talking about. Big yellow one with the running man. But what I noticed from when moving to Vietnam, which didn't happen like when I left South Africa, especially in Hi-Fi Corp, and I know technology has become more advanced since then, but they use that exact approach where you'll look at the price on the shelf, and then and it can be any employee. You don't even have to have good sales skills, really. Will come up to you and they'll say, "Oh no, yeah, let me look on my app on my phone," and you get like $100 discounts or something ridiculous on the watch. So it's a great sales technique, but it's something that I definitely noticed in Vietnam and I haven't noticed in South Africa. Nicola, I don't know if you've seen something like that in South Africa.
I haven't seen it directly, but I know that things like that are coming.
Okay.
And in certain environments they have enabled, and I know things like Hi-Fi Corp and Incredible Connection, they're definitely moving in those directions. Yeah. But it's always interesting. I can see the value of having an app to enable people in a retail environment. I can see the value of an app, like you mentioned, Strava, where you're sort of networking with people and clubbing up to see what other people are doing. It's sort of a comparison. So where you've got a comparison, I think people are keen to go back. Then you've got like Discovery Health or health apps. It might be Metropolitan, but you've got point system. There's a reward. So to keep engagement going, there's got to be a level of incentive that it's either convenience or reward. That's fundamentally, you're either getting, it's convenient for me to use Spotify, and I'm getting points on my health app. And the reward you get on the comm side with like a WhatsApp is the connection.
Yeah.
So it's still a point of reward.
What about competition? Would that also be a factor to get people to come back? Like think about like Candy Crush, for example. You want to be top of the log. Do you know what I
mean? So these are so one of my, I don't know if I'm willing to say it's an area of expertise, but for many, many years, I've been involved in building and designing incentive mechanisms. So within digital, within the digital space. So it's such an interesting space because I'm not sure where I sit ethically around it, because you're basically, when you go through this reward mechanism and incentive mechanism for, you're putting in these places to attract people back, right? And I do believe that in many ways it can be unhealthy. It can be very, very unhealthy. But the concept of incentivizing someone it's a natural, it takes part naturally within human beings, If you incentivize something, no matter what, they will typically do it. Most of the time, and you can take it outside of it to take space. And I'll use an example. So for a payments application in Indonesia, what we built was the incentive engine. So what that means is, when someone comes into an application 3 times a week, they get 3 points. Or if you come in every single day for a certain time, you get X amount of this. If you transact above this amount every 2 days or above this amount, then you get this. And so those points obviously collect due to your loyalty and your loyalty to that service or that application. And then you can use those points in other ways, either in real life cash to purchase rewards, whatever it might be. And it's huge because and this one was a unique solution because it had to remain flexible, because the way that you reward people changes over time. It changes at different seasons. It changes for different demographics, and so if you have a one size fits all, it just won't work. You have to have the flexibility to say, okay, Nicola, she likes to shop at this time on this day on Saturdays because she's this age and she does. So therefore, you actually incentivizing very specific target sets, and it's a huge industry too. Everyone's doing it.
Mind blowing how much goes into developing an app, eh?
Yeah.
That's why you need
Maybe we
literally.
won't.
Yeah, maybe we won't. Back off
maybe
now.
we won't.
Get out while we can. Jesus, it's like you have to have someone so specialized in each like tiny little field. Like you said, you've got the incentivized system, and you've probably got someone who specializes in just that. You know what I mean? It's crazy, mind blowing.
So I think that, that's why I speak so much about that ideation phase up front before you do anything. And I'm not a huge fan of over complex business models and business plans and stuff. I believe that you need to assess the market very, very clearly. Like, is there a user base? How frequently are they? If they're going to use it once a month, you're done. There's no way to function.
Yeah.
It needs to be something that they're going to use at least once a week. But then really looking at, how am I going to keep them coming back? How am I going to acquire new users, knowing that I'm going to drop off X amount? Okay, so if I know that I'm going to drop off X amount, therefore I need to build in some mechanisms where people can share the application to others, so that I don't have to spend more marketing budget to acquire a new user. Okay, so now we need some form of network within this where people can share with others, so that my marketing budget doesn't take a huge hit. I need to be able to generate revenue. Okay, so what's my revenue plan? Which strategy or revenue model am I going to go with? Whether it's freemium, subscription, paid up front, pay for the service. Okay, so we've got the bones, and then you need to look. Okay, how is the system going to scale over time? So okay, what systems do I need behind the application to help it scale, so that when we do validate this, it can actually move quicker than what we, if you just have the example I gave earlier with the app and the email, like that's the most simple version, but you might actually need something a little bit more robust to scale as you go. But once you have those bones, just getting something out there is really, really important, and just see how it goes, I guess.
So I quite like the idea of an app as a user interface. But there's also this difference between a web-based app and something you download off the Play Store. And if you could have a really good website with a mobile interface, do you really need an app, or is that an app? So
it's a very, very good question. So I am personally, I prefer that approach. So to build. Okay, so maybe one step back. There are some times when you need an app. Okay, and there's some times where you absolutely don't need an app. And so part of what I need to do when we're advising clients is to challenge you and say, do you need an application really? Okay. So a good example is, so there was a company that wanted to build an employee onboarding application. Okay, so for their employees, when they come to the company, you download an application, you put in your code, and then it says, welcome, Andrew, you're joining this fantastic new company. Here's your onboarding process. Okay. And you can chat to your new onboarder, your HR person, whoever it is. You can upload your documents, sign contracts, and very, very cool idea, in terms of an employee experience, new employee experience. And they're like, we need an app. We absolutely need an app. But the problem is that person's going to download the app and never go back. So we challenged them a lot. They said it's definitely going to cost you more, for sure, because you're going to need a web platform as well. So you're going to need both. And we can also just make it a really good mobile experience. And we can make sure that all the functions are working. Sometimes in the past, it's not so easy to do certain things without the application. But in this scenario, an app was definitely not needed. So they've gone with the web platform, mobile responsive, so very easy to use. And there's new technology, for example, progressive web apps, which is actually a web application, like you were saying, but you can also make it available in the App Store. So technology is actually moving not away from mobile applications, because there's certain circumstances where you definitely need that. But they're kind of merging the technologies now where you can actually have both, depending on the type of technology that you use.
Okay. I'm interested there. So you said they have the web application, but still access from their phone. So does that mean they would click on like a button and it would bring up their browser rather than open an app?
So basically you can have a web application. Let's maybe use, so you can have a web application, and you can, when you, in the PWA, it's called Progressive Web App. In that scenario, when you open the web, it'd say convert to mobile application, essentially.
Okay.
And it will then make that web application into a mobile application on your phone. So when you access it, it looks like you're in a mobile application.
Oh,
Wow.
okay.
Okay. So
it's actually a web.
Yeah.
It's a web app.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like, so then wouldn't everybody just make web apps and then they just convert into mobile apps?
No, so there's many different circumstances where you can't, like gaming, for example, where you need to actually leverage the software of the operating system that you're using to build those types of experiences. If you're using a lot of GPS functions or accelerometer or, those types of things, like if I want to build an app to control my drone, you need an application, a web application, a function, because you're using GPS, you're using things. You also there's also a lot more security. This is not 100% true, but there's a lot of security functions that you can do. For example, how come FMB didn't just convert their website to a mobile application? Because actually they're mobile, they can offer a unique experience there, and they have, they've built in certain notifications and security functions that make it very important for them to have an application.
Yeah. Fair enough.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because, and that's why the title of this discussion is an app for that, is because there's so many applications out there, and I would go so far to say there's probably 30% of them that don't need to be applications, and they failed because they went mobile first, or they went with an app first when they didn't need to, and it's very difficult to acquire customers through the mobile route. So in your ideation phase, you need to be very, very honest with yourself as to whether you think you need a mobile application, and is that the right strategy for you. Sometimes it's very clear, sometimes it's a little bit ambiguous, and so you need to weigh up the cost as well, because it's more expensive to build the mobile applications too.
Yeah. Nicola, have you ever tried to build an app?
No.
No. Okay, cool. So I thought I'd ask you first. Jules.
But Andrew, I'm dying to ask Jules a question.
Yeah, go for it.
Go ahead.
In your experience, what's the best customer acquisition strategy? Because access to markets is the biggest stumbling block for new entrepreneurs and startups. So you just said an app is not the best way to acquire a customer. So
it might not be the most experienced person to answer this, but from what I've seen, if you need to have a huge marketing budget to acquire one new customer, I think it's very tough to keep that up. And so having some form of a network or a way that it's not just you in that application, that you're sharing it with other people, is the best way to grow your application organically. So by word of mouth, making sure that people are sharing this with other people, because either they know that person's going to get value from it, or by inviting someone else in my network, I'm going to get some referral fee of sorts,
Mm-hmm.
But as a business, taking FMB, for example, again, you have to use their app. So that sounds like a good customer acquisition,
Yeah, they make you. Otherwise, you can't pay anybody.
Yeah,
exactly. But you'd probably never have a social element there or network element, other than saying, I want to pay you, who's not at FNB, and if you open an FNB account through this mechanism, I want to pay you, and by me paying you, it's quicker if I open up an FNB account for you. Something along those lines, just encouraging people within your network to grow. That's the fastest way to grow your application organically. Yeah.
So it's pretty much the same whether you were in a tech environment or not. Customer acquisition is referral.
Yeah,
exactly.
Referrals and incentives are probably the best ways to get new customers.
Well, I think referrals the best way to get loyal customers.
That's
So,
true.
you know, in this space, even on Think and Nick podcasts, you want people that are listening to your content regularly. And someone says, hey, you guys got to listen to this podcast. They had fantastic content, you know, and actually then through a referral, you're more likely to build a loyal customer rather than someone that comes in and drops off that learns about it through some marketing hoo-ha, you know. So, and loyalty is that's the name of the game ultimately.
Yeah, for sure.
Great. I'll take that on board. Thanks, Shula. Make sure to share the podcast, all the listeners out there. let's grow the network. So yeah, coming back to that question. So I got a couple more for you, but so Nicola, you've never obviously developed an app, and Shulz, we've actually had a bit of an experience with you having a go. So do you want to just touch on that briefly, like how that experience was and maybe some of the challenges that you went through during that stage?
So I'll explain my experience and my process. So my objective was to get into an accelerator and then use an accelerator to accelerate, of course. But to really, you know, the approach was to build something that would get accepted into an accelerator that would then help you to really grow from there, right? Because I think when you try to do something that's new by yourself, very, very tough, unless you have a lot of money, of course. And so what we did was, it was the first wave of COVID. Vietnam obviously had no real effects, right? But while the world was burning, so what the concept was, I wanted to reward people for doing things. That can be anything, right? That was the initial concept. I want people to be rewarded for basically for going out and experiencing things. So how do I do that? So what I wanted to do was to drop rewards, vouchers, products around the city that you could go to and collect. But that would be at some sort of store or shop or some brand that's also offering some experience, right? So that was the point, because I knew that, you know, around COVID time, you know, getting people into your stores is going to be difficult. And with the whole e-commerce space, online shopping, etc., still 70% of shopping is done in store, you know. And so that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to reward people, and it would go as far as to say, well, if you also go on this hike over here, you can get XYZ, right? So that was the concept. And I leveraged off the concept of Pokemon Go, where this was, you know, an augmented reality experience where when you collect it and you open up your phone, for example, you walk into Starbucks because there's a voucher there or product there, and you open your phone, it could be snowing because it's Christmas. And that's the power that's the power of augmented reality, really, is you can offer bespoke experiences to individuals anywhere, really, you know. So tying in, it's called hyperlocation based rewards together with augmented reality. And the step one was to, exactly, look at the business model. How can it make money? In this case, the store would pay me $1 for every voucher that was collected in store, right? So someone comes to the store, collects the voucher, they're going to use it because they're in the store, and I get $1. So yes, I can make money. Is there a market for it? So, you know, if we did the market research, yes, there's definitely a market for the amount of people that shop in store. If you look at Google's history of near me searches, you know, things near me, it's just going up and up and up. And so there was definitely a market when we were able to like substantiate that. And we also looked at, okay, how do we keep people coming back? Like, what is the incentive mechanism? So one of the things that you could collect was coins, for example. And you could use those coins to buy other things in the store that we had in the app, you know. So there was a kind of digital currency that was being formed as a result. And the next step was really just build something that you can test this concept, build in the analytics and tracking data to measure people's engagement and what's working, what they want, what they don't want, etc. So we built something. What we built is we built basically a login and a map. And on the map, you could place different pins around the city, and you could attach a reward to that pin, and people could go onto the app and see them. And then when you go to that location and open up your phone, there'd be like a 3D floating like image there that you could click on, and the reward would go into your bank. So we could test that critical path, and we did that. We basically ran a test over 2.5 months in Vietnam, and it was so fascinating to see how people were using the application. And also, we also learned what do they want. So one of the things was that they saw that the voucher was in Starbucks, for argument's sake, but then they didn't know how to get there. That, you know, so they'd go out and then they would go to Google Maps and get there, and it was just messy, right? So we built in a feature where you can just click on the reward and it'll open Google Maps automatically and take you there. And then when you get there, close it and it'll open up the experience when you get there. We also built like we saw that people were competing against each other now. So I said for this test, whoever collects the most suits around town will give you like a 2 mil Lazada voucher, for argument's sake. And it got so serious at one point that people were waking up at 4 a.m. to go and collect the voucher. Well, because it expires as well, you know. So we had a situation where one guy got up on his motorbike, the other guy was going just for like a normal run because he was training for a marathon. The runner got there first because he started earlier.
Yeah.
And so there was huge drama amongst the mates.
I think I know exactly who you're referring to as well.
Yeah. And so it was awesome. It was so awesome to see. And, you know, then we built in the competitions feature, which is the ability for a brand to publish. So Heineken would publish, okay, this is the Heineken challenge this month, and there'll be different Heineken spots where you can go get a Heineken beer, get the voucher, enjoy the experience of whichever bar you're at, share it, and etc. So we took all this data to an accelerator and we pitched and we got in, and it was really exciting. I think the challenge was that COVID had really accelerated here in Vietnam, so we couldn't leave our houses really. And they asked me to leave my current occupation in order to pursue this. So it was a very tough decision, but I decided not to pursue that. And, you know, maybe it'll come up again when I have less responsibility. But just the whole experience was just the most rewarding thing, you know, and you know, like designing the actual incentive mechanism, the application, building it, testing it, watching people use it was just awesome.
Yeah, super fun. All right, Shul. So just to wrap things up, what advice do you have for organizations or individuals who want to develop an app?
Don't overinvest early on. Build something small, test it, and learn and adapt after that. Don't spend too long on business plans and models, but make sure you have like the critical inflection points aligned with what you think it can do, and actually just get started with something small that you can test. That's really the crux of it. Awesome.
Well, that was very, very insightful. And I've learned a hell of a lot about apps. So now we need to decide if we want to make an app, Nicola. I don't know so much anymore after that.
I was like,
no. Anyways, So Nicola, once again, thank you for your time. And Andrew, thank you so much for your time. It's been a bit of a struggle to get you on here because I know you're busy. So we really appreciate it. So this is the end of the episode, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. Again, don't forget to like, follow, subscribe. And follow Andrew as well at Andy Schulz. If you want to get in touch with him, you can get in touch with him there. All right, cool.
Brilliant.
Have a great day, guys.
Ciao.
Cheers,
Thanks, guys. Cheers.
For more news and content about ThinkConnect, go to www.thinkconnect.com or visit our Facebook or Instagram pages at ThinkConnect.